In this module, we will discuss the steps to applying and receiving approval from the Wisconsin Pharmacy Examining Board to implement a Community Check Tech program at your pharmacy. In this module, we will review regulations that were waived to permit TCT, discuss requirements for implementing a TCT program, list medication excluded from TCT, describe the role of the supervising pharmacist, including record retention and reporting requirements, list BPT eligibility requirements, outline the training and validation process, review the quality assurance process, and discuss patient consultation. TCT is not permitted under Wisconsin law or regulation. In 2015, Wisconsin Act 313 was signed into law to permit the Pharmacy Examining Board to grant waivers to administrative rules in order to pilot a program. The pilot program must be related to the practice of pharmacy or prescription drug verification, and the pilot must be utilized to improve the safety, quality, or efficiency of the practice of pharmacy. The requirements of the pilot are set by the board. The pilot programs will expire within 3 years as required by law. Rules may be promulgated if the pilot is deemed successful. The Community TCT program is set to expire on October 31st, 2019, or upon promulgation of rules, whichever is sooner. Pharmacies will no longer apply for individual variances to conduct TCT. They will instead apply to the pilot program. As mentioned, the Pharmacy Examining Board grants waivers to rules to pilot a program. To permit the Community TCT pilot, the board granted waivers to portions of FAR 7 that are listed on the screen. So how does an interested community pharmacy apply to be part of the pilot program? First, the pharmacy must meet the eligibility requirements set by the board. Information and application materials are found through the Pharmacy Examining Board's web page on the Wisconsin Department of Safety and Professional Services website. Pharmacies are considered eligible for the pilot program if they meet the following criteria. The pharmacy is licensed and located in the state of Wisconsin. The pharmacy may be an independent, chain, or health system community pharmacy. The pharmacy has a continuous quality improvement program in place, which means a system of standards and procedures to identify and evaluate quality-related events and to constantly enhance the efficiency and effectiveness of the structures and process of a pharmacy system that determine the outcomes of medication use. The pharmacy must be willing to participate in the research studies of Community Check Tech approved by the Pharmacy Examining Board. Patient consultation through procedures like show and tell must continue to take place to afford the pharmacist a visual check of the medication before it is dispensed to the patient. Inclusion of the prescription label for the patient to visually check the medication after it is dispensed is also permissible. Each site participating in the pilot program must designate a supervising pharmacist for the location. The supervising pharmacist must be licensed in the state of Wisconsin. The supervising pharmacist will be accountable for all operations, outcomes, and reporting for the TCT program. Final checks completed by the validated pharmacy technicians and quality assurance measures will be considered delegated acts of the supervising pharmacist. The supervising pharmacist does not need to be the managing pharmacist. However, a managing pharmacist can serve as both the managing and supervising pharmacist. The technician completing the final check of a product is known as the validated pharmacy technician. From here on out, the validated pharmacy technician will be known as a VPT. To become a VPT, a technician must meet the following criteria. The technician must be age 18 years or older. They must have an employment status of greater than or equal to 0.5 full-time equivalents at the pilot pharmacy. The technician must have a minimum of 2,000 hours of experience pharmacy technician or completion of an accredited technician training program. The technician must have at least 6 months of employment at the pilot pharmacy to be knowledgeable and comfortable with the pilot pharmacy's workflow and policies. The technician will complete didactic and practical training related to TCT. We will talk more about the training materials in the next slide. Finally, to become a VPT, the technician must demonstrate and maintain accuracy rates of 99.8% during the initial validation and quality assurance processes. More on this will come in the next couple slides. Throughout the rest of Module 2, a technician completing trainings and the initial validation process will be known as a candidate. Before a candidate can complete final checks, they must complete didactic and practical trainings. The minimum requirements for trainings are outlined by the Pharmacy Examining Board. The board requires a candidate must receive training on elements of a package label, medication and pharmacy abbreviations needed to match ordered and dispensed medications, common dispensing medication errors and concepts, such as wrong drug, dose, dosage form, look-alike, sound-alike errors, and high alert medications. The site will also brief the candidate on the organization's medication use process of procurement, ordering, dispensing, administration, and monitoring. The organization will also review policies and procedures for reporting errors. PSW has developed comprehensive online training materials for pharmacists and technicians to meet the requirements of the Pharmacy Examining Board. The modules are registered with ACPE and eligible for CE credit. Once the didactic training is complete, candidates will complete site-specific training. PSW developed a practical training checklist that can be utilized during the practical training. Once didactic and practical training are complete, the candidate will complete the initial validation process. The validation process requires the candidate to complete 1,000 consecutive final checks over a minimum of 5 separate days. 100% of the final checks will be audited by a pharmacist for accuracy. If the candidate is at least 99.8% accurate in their final checks, they will become a VPT that can complete the final checks as a part of the TCT process. Quality assurance measures are in place to ensure the accuracy of a VPT is maintained after the initial validation process. 5% of the total number of final checks will be audited by a pharmacist each day TCT is conducted. All errors will be recorded and individual logs will be kept for each VPT. For example, if VPT A completed 200 final checks during the day, a pharmacist must audit a minimum of 10 final checks completed by VPT A during that day to ensure their accuracy. Additionally, if VPT B completed 100 final checks during the same day, the pharmacist must also audit a minimum of 5 final checks completed by VPT B to ensure the accuracy of that technician. The accuracy of each technician will be tracked individually. The accuracy of a VPT over the previous 12 months will be assessed on a quarterly basis. If the VPT does not maintain 99.8% accuracy, they must be revalidated using the process described in the previous slide in order to continue TCT activities. Additionally, if a VPT does not practice TCT for 6 months, they must be revalidated to resume TCT activities. The Pharmacy Examining Board excluded 4 types of medications from the TCT process. Compounded, reconstituted, mailed, and delivered prescriptions are all excluded from TCT and should go through the traditional workflow where a pharmacist completes the final check. Prescriptions that also required technology overrides during the filling process are also excluded. For example, When using barcode scanning, if an NDC does not match and must be overridden in the computer, the prescription should return to the traditional workflow for a pharmacist to complete the final check. Bringing this all together, what will the workflow look like? Workflows will need to be customized to each site. However, the sample on the screen provides a nice overview. Pharmacists must still complete a clinical review of each prescription, regardless of which workflow the prescription moves through. As you can see, the TCT and traditional workflows mirror one another. The pharmacy receives a prescription to be filled. It then moves to the processing station. Is it a compounded, reconstituted, mailed, or delivered prescription? If yes, the prescription is sent through the traditional workflow. If no, meaning the prescription is eligible, the prescription can go through the TCT workflow. The prescription is then filled. Did any technology overrides occur while the prescription was being filled? If the answer is yes, the prescription should return to the traditional workflow, which is signified by placing the prescription in a red basket. If no technology overrides occurred, it may go through the TCT workflow, which is signified by being placed in a blue basket. The prescription moves to the checking station. Red baskets will be checked by a pharmacist. Blue baskets will be checked by a VPT. Was the VPT uncertain of the accuracy of their prescription or have a question about the prescription? If so, the prescription should be placed in a red basket for the pharmacist to verify. If the VPT finds the prescription to be accurate, the prescription can be sent to the pickup window. You can see the two workflows merge at the pickup window. As required by law, the pharmacist must still provide patient counseling to each patient through methods like show and tell. To summarize the workflow requirements that will be consistent through all sites, workflows are tailored to meet the needs of each site. Technology to support dispensing will be utilized if technology is available at that site. A pharmacist must be physically located on premises and positioned in a way to enable direct patient interaction. Staffing of the pharmacy must be adequate. Drug utilization review must occur by a pharmacist prior to dispensing. Where that fits into the workflow will be customized to each location. Pharmacist consultation, like show and tell, must also take place as required by law. Records are required to be maintained as a part of the pilot program. The policies, procedures, training materials, initial validation and revalidation records for each VPT, and quality assurance logs for each VPT must be maintained for 5 years. These documents must be made available to the Pharmacy Examining Board upon request. Aggregate data must be reported to the Pharmacy Examining Board on an annual basis on a form approved by the board. Now that we have reviewed the requirements of the current pilot program, it is important to point out that the Pharmacy Examining Board has the ability to modify the parameters of the pilot at any time. Updated pilot requirements can be found on the Pharmacy Examining Board's webpage of the Department of Safety and Professional Services website. If modifications to the pilot are made, participants will remain in the pilot at the discretion of the board.